Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my first impressions look on the Wade Flash 2. So if you guys didn't know, the original or the first Wade Flash was one of my favorite hoop shoes of the summer because it was just so nice, so well ventilated, super duper light, like one of the lightest hoop shoes that you can get that year. But like just really great for guards, you know what I mean? Very, very responsive. And finally, the 2 came out, you know what I mean? And also like the design looks so good. This is the Blossom colorway. So in terms of price, they actually upped the price, which is a little bit disappointing. You know, it retails for 120 bucks. So 120 bucks is still a very good price, but they did give us better tech. So I feel like it is a little bit justified, right? Because the Wade Flash, the original one, didn't use Boom. The Wade Flash 2 is using Boom. It says Boom right over here. And also it is full length Boom. But also the original Wade Flash, it retailed for 100 bucks, but you can get it on sale for like 80, 90 bucks, which I think is a very, very good price. So if you guys do want to cop either of those shoes, I try to leave in the affiliate link in the description box. And if you do choose to get either of them, it does help me out if you buy it through the affiliate link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. But also if you use the code TheSoulDrop10, you can get an extra $10 off on the original Wade Flash. And if you guys do have any questions, you guys can always DM me on Instagram, you know, so it'll be right over here. And I try to get to you guys. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit late in replying. But yeah, let's get it started right off with the Traction. So in this colorway, we have a very nice kind of like light pink color, you know, almost like cherry blossom, obviously. And it is inspired by the Flash, right? So if you guys didn't know, that's kind of like Dwayne Wade's nickname. It's like a lightning bolt pattern going throughout the entire outsole, and there is a pretty nice kind of like texture on it as well. So this is actually tough rubber, right? So tough rubber is supposed to be, well, at least what they say is it's supposed to be 2.5 times more durable than traditional rubber. So if you're gonna be playing on an outdoor court, it should be good for durability. And also if you're gonna be wearing these casually as well, you should be good for durability as well. And not only is it using the tough rubber, which is supposed to be the actual compound, which is supposed to be a little bit more durable, but the actual grooves are pretty thick and the actual rubber is pretty hard too. So again, with all that, it feels like it'll be very durable and you should be fine on outdoor court, right? And how is the bite so far? It feels really freaking nice. There's a nice solid bite on my wood floors in my apartment, of course. I haven't played in these yet, but just from my first impressions on my wood floors, it feels really nice so far. I was very, very impressed and feels extremely similar to the original Wade Flash, right? And in terms of dust performance, it also seems like it'll be pretty good because I was wearing these for a couple hours today, obviously before I filmed this, and it seemed to be picking up a little bit of dust, but even still, like I could see the dog hair and the dust on there, but it seemed to be binding through that pretty well. You know what I mean? So I feel like dust performance is going to be pretty good. Of course, that's just my first impression. That's just a guess, right? And also, it has a nice loud high-pitched squeak, which of course, squeak has nothing to do with performance. But if you like to have a nice squeak, the shoe has a nice squeak. It doesn't feel like super duper loud though. You know what I mean? Comparing to like the Wild 12, the Wild 12 it screams. It's like freaking loud. The Wade Flash 2, it has a nice squeak, but not as loud as that, right? So yeah, there is a traction there. It feels very, very nice. And also, of course, here in the forefoot, as well as here in the midfoot. Oh, I mean, here in the midfoot, it exposes the kind of like midfoot shank plate, but also it exposes the Boom, right? So moving on to the heel to toe transition, it feels extremely freaking smooth. So here in the heel, you can see just how curved and rounded the shape is, right? Not only that, we have a fully exposed midsole, and this is Light Foam Ultra. So yeah, they're using Light Foam Ultra for the actual like structure. They're calling it the Light Foam Ultra structure, but it's pretty much a midsole carrier and it's freaking soft, right? So it has a nice soft feel. It's extremely smooth here in the heel. Coming here into the forefoot, you know, we have a nice curved shape as well. So just from the shape, it has a very nice smooth feel. And then here in the forefoot, we have a very easy flex. You know what I mean? It is very easy to flex. I can do it with one finger. Torsion support, I would say is not the best. It feels very similar and comparable to the Sabrina 3. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a very, very flexible, very easy, nimble feel. So yeah, it feels extremely smooth, especially here in the heel, but it's also extremely flexible, right? So there is the heel to toe transition. Moving on to the cushioning setup. The cushioning setup feels extremely nice too, right? So like I said, they are using Light Foam Ultra, but also they are using full length Boom, which is right underneath your foot, right? So the full length Boom isn't super thick, it feels like, you know what I mean? But it still has a nice kind of like comfortable, subtle feel, you know what I mean? So first of all, the insole is just a regular insole that they use. You know, Wade uses the insole a lot in like a majority of their shoes. shoes. So it's not super thick, but it does add a little bit to the step and comfort. But if you look underneath that, we do have a very soft mesh struggle board, right? So feeling it and pressing it, it's not really glued down at all. It's not stiff at all. It's really, really soft. You can feel the boom with your finger, but also with your foot. And just like stepping into the shoe right away, you can feel the boom right underneath your foot, right? So it's a nice kind of like subtle feel. Again, it's not like super cushiony, like for example, comparing to the 805 Ultra V2, those are extremely crazy. This is a lot more subtle, you know what I mean? But it's still like pretty soft underfoot, right? But then with the boom, again, it's not like super thick. So I feel like I could feel the boom, but then kind of like it's soft and then it kind of ends. You know what I mean? The underfoot feel is pretty dang comfortable, but it doesn't feel like super bouncy. It just has like a pretty soft, subtle feel underfoot, especially in the heel, a little bit in the forefoot, right? Also, in terms of court feel, I would say it's pretty good. You know, it's not as good as like the Sabrina 3. Sabrina 3 is very, very low to the ground. And then we have the Wade Flash 2, and then we have the Jaw 3. You know what I mean? So also comparing to the original Wade Flash, it's a little bit higher up off the ground as well, but it has a little bit more cushion, it feels like, compared to the original Wade Flash, right? Also, here in the heel, we do have a nice bit of compression. Like I said, we do have Lightfoam Ultra, and it is very, very exposed here in the heel. And also, again, it is very, very soft, so we do have a nice bit of compression as well. So that feels extremely soft too. So overall, it has a very soft, subtle feel, and feels very typical, I would say. You know, it's a really nice cushioning setup, but I would say it's typical in the way of like a lot of Chinese companies have this setup. You know what I mean? Like, has a soft kind of like heel compression. Underfoot is very, very soft as well because they're using a soft foam with a soft mesh struggle board. Has overall pretty good core feel too. So again, it's a really nice cushioning setup, especially for only $120, you know? But it's more like a typical feel. However, I would say it has a little bit more cushion than normal, especially comparing it to the first Wade Flash because it is using boom, like full length boom, and also feels a little bit higher up off the ground than, you know, like the Sabrina 3, which, you know, Sabrina 3 has like one of the best core feels that you can get, right? So there is the cushioning setup there. Moving on to the upper. So the upper is also pretty freaking nice. They are using, well, they're saying it's like a fabric material, right? Or pretty much like a textile. And then here in the toe box, right on top of your toes, it's like a really fine textile material, right? It definitely does feel a little bit glued down. It does feel a little bit cheap, like a little flimsy. Look at this, right? I don't know if you guys can hear it, right? Just a tiny bit, but it's actually pretty dang thin. Obviously, it's not as thin as like the Sabrina 3s or like the original Wade Flash, but this definitely has, first of all, way better durability, but also feels like a lot more support, you know what I mean? Also, there are some like pretty cool embroidered parts to this upper too. You know, like very, very fine embroidered parts, which I don't know how they did that, but they did. There's a little bit of fuse here on the medial side of the shoe, so I guess if you do toe drags like this way, then it'll be good. You know what I mean? And also, obviously, the most noticeable feature about this shoe is the lightning bolt, you know what I mean? So they did it in the Wade Flash, they also did it in the Son of Flash, which Son of Flash was an amazing shoe, but also they did it in the Wade Flash too, right? But here in this shoe, the actual like lightning bolt goes throughout the entire shoe, which is very, very nice. They incorporated it into the actual upper, but also it's a different material, right? So you can see the stitching right over here. It's very, very thick. And then we do have, it kind of reminds you of like Octoknit. You guys remember the Octoknit from like the 808 4 Ultra? Kind of reminds you of that. And also, it's really, really well ventilated where the actual open part is, but it's like a very small area, you know what I mean? But where you actually need support, there is an underlaying material as well. So I don't think you have to really worry about support or durability too much, you know what I mean? But there is an open area here where, or it's, again, it's a very small area, but it is open and does allow for a lot of airflow. Also, another place where there's a crazy amount of airflow, which I've never seen before, is right on the bottom of the tongue. So it's pretty much like a grid-like pattern, and look at how open this mesh material is, you know what I mean? So there's a crazy amount of airflow through that, you know? So that's crazy. And also it's a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then here on top of the tongue, very minimal padding, like pretty much zero padding. And also on top of the tongue, we have the Way of Wade logo. And then here in the back of the shoe, we have this pretty nice, like I feel like they kind of like OG lining material that feels extremely cheap. You know, they're kind of getting away from that, especially in a lot of Chinese companies, even on their cheaper shoes, which I do like, right? So this lining material feels very nice. It's like a hexagon shape, you know? So that's going throughout the entire kind of like material here for the lining. But in terms of like the actual padding though, it's very minimal, you know what I mean? There's a very minimal amount of padding, you know? So it's not super cozy, which obviously makes sense because this shoe, when we get into weight, this shoe is extremely freaking lightweight. So overall it feels really nice on foot. It conforms to my foot really well. Has a very minimal feel, but obviously with this kind of like textile, it feels like it'll be a little bit more durable and a little bit more supportive than a material like the Sabrina 3, right? So there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit. So I went up half a size and this shoe fits me pretty well. However, it does run a little bit long, right? So yeah, there is a little bit of length. So if you want it to be a really snug fit, then you should be fine going true to size. But for all of my wave weight shoes, I like to go up half a size a little bit because they tend to have a pretty snug fit. So I don't mind the extra little length there. Also for the toe box, it is a pretty snug fit, but it's not like super snug. I can curl my toes up just a tiny bit. But yeah, I feel like with this material though, it's not super stiff. Like for example, a super stiff material and unforgiving material is like the JB4, you know what I mean? But also a very forgiving material is like the Sabrina 3, which is like just crazy freaking soft. So in the middle of that, we got the Wade Flash 2, you know what I mean? So it does feel pretty nice and supportive, and kind of like a little bit more rigid than like a really thin mesh material, which we find in a lot of modern day basketball shoes, right? So that feels nice for the toe box, and also for the width, it's a very normal width, you know what I mean? So yeah, if you want a pretty snug fit, then you just go true to size. If you want to be a little bit more on the safer side, like me, then you should be fine going up half a size, right? And now moving on to the support and lockdown, I feel like it'll be pretty good. Obviously not the most supportive shoe that you can get, right? But it feels adequate for support. Obviously for lateral containment, we do have, this is actually a foam material, right? So we do have the foam coming up acting as a sidewall, obviously here in the forefoot, which will, I mean, you need that, you know what I mean? So that's there, and it does feel overall adequate for support. And also here in the heel, the foam comes up, as well as there being an internal TPU heel counter. So lateral containment feels like it'll be very good, right? Also lateral stability, we do have a very nice outrigger. You can see just how wide it is here in the forefoot. It protrudes out. But obviously with the overall shoe, it has a very nimble, very flexible feel. You know what I mean? Especially underfoot, but also with the upper being really soft and very minimal too. So again, it has a very similar feel to the Sabrina 3s, the Tatum 4s, you know what I mean? The Luka 4s, where it has that really soft kind of like guard shoe like feel, but it has more cushion than like the Sabrina 3 and like the Luka 4, and comparable to like the Tatum 4s, you know? So yeah, this shoe feels adequate for support, but also has that guard shoe like feel. And now moving on to the weight of the shoe. I mean, when I first got this, I was like, yo, this shoe feels extremely freaking lightweight, and I was expecting lightweight, but this shoe feels crazy lightweight, you know? And again, the original Wade Flash for the year, for that entire year, it was the lightest hoop shoe in terms of weight, you know what I mean? Or like in terms of like shoes that I got into review. So I'm guessing like 10 ounces, guys. 10 points. Yeah, 10 ounces. Oh my goodness. And let's check the other shoe. 10 ounces on the dot. That's freaking insane. That's extremely freaking lightweight, guys. As compared to the Sabrinas. The Sabrinas are like 11. The Sabrina 3s are 11.45 ounces, guys. An ounce and a half heavier than the Wade Flash 2, you know? So this shoe is the epitome of lightweight, right? If you want a lightweight shoe by weight, the number weight, this is one of the best that you can get, you know? And it's almost at the 9-ounce range, of course, and it's just a tiny bit heavier than, you know, like one of the lightest hoop shoes that you can get right now, which is the Curry Series 7. I think it's like, it clocks in at like 9 point something ounces, you know? So yeah, this shoe is extremely freaking lightweight, has nice cushion, traction feels good so far, and the upper feels extremely minimal and comfortable on foot. So yeah, there is a weight there. Moving on to the aesthetics, holy crap, this shoe looks freaking amazing. And this colorway looks really nice too, you know what I mean? I love the like really light pink, you know, color that the rest of the shoe has, but then the dark, like kind of hot pink is only for the actual logo. So that looks really nice. This colorway looks nice, but also the overall design of the shoe looks really, really good too. Like the logo being like a lightning bolt, you know, even in the Son of Flash, but also the original Wade Flash, just looks really, really nice to me. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, this shoe feels really freaking nice, right? And it has a really good guard shoe like feel. You know, again, if you've tried the original Wade Flash, or if you've tried like the Sabrina 3, Sabrina 2, Jaw 2, Luka 4s, Tatum 4s, and you like that really soft, nimble, lightweight, very minimal upper type of feel, then the Wade Flash 2 is right in that category, right? But I would say the Wade Flash 2 has a little bit more cushion than those shoes that I mentioned, I guess besides like the Tatum 4s, you know, which, you know, the actual underfoot cushion feels extremely comfortable in this shoe, you know? So not only that, but also it's way lighter than all the other shoes that I mentioned. So yeah, the shoe's feeling really nice. I'm very, very excited to play in these. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on the Wade Flash 2. Again, if you guys do want to cop, try to leave in the free link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.